Hello and welcome to another edition of the Moving Iron Podcast. This podcast is proudly provided by Axon, helping dealers move more iron for almost 100 years. Find out more at agmarkets.com. Axon was started almost 100 years ago out of a passion for keeping agriculture moving. It's that same passion that drives them today. With a vision for a better experience for both farmer and dealer, they set out to create a better way to move more iron. When you partner with Axon, you get immediate access to a full range of products and solutions designed to meet the complex needs of today's grower. Axon carries all major brands and sizes of tires, wheels, and tracks. From custom colors and sizes to fully customized wheels, you can have the solution for virtually any problem today's farmer is trying to solve. To find more or become an Axon dealer, please visit agmarkets.com. This podcast is also brought to you by Valley Transportation. Valley Transportation has been hauling ag and construction equipment across the country for the past 33 years. Call Parker at 800-657-4910 or go to valleytransinc.com for all your trucking needs. At Valley Transportation, our goal is to help you reach yours. This podcast is also brought to you by Ag Direct. No matter how you buy your ag equipment, from a dealer, auction, or a private party, Ag Direct can help you finance it. You can even apply online at agdirect.com. Learn more about your financing options at agdirect.com.
Moving iron in the 21st century. Hard-working people working hard for you and me. Moving iron time and time again. Through the years you'll find us here. Moving Iron.
Hello and welcome to Moving Iron Podcast Markets. This edition of the Moving Iron Podcast is brought to you by Axon Tire, helping dealers move more iron for the past 100 years. For more information, go to agmarkets.com. Valley Transportation has been hauling ag and construction equipment across the country for the past 33 years. Call Parker at 800-657-4910 for all your trucking needs at Valley Transportation. Our goal is to help you reach yours. No matter how you buy ag equipment from a dealer, auction, or a private party, Ag Direct can help you finance it. You can even go online and apply at agdirect.com. Learn more about your financing options at agdirect.com. Nailed it this week, Shawn. Nailed it. Nailed it.
Well, okay. So hold on now. 3 years, I was betting 4, but you did in 3. That's good.
You know what? I'm a fast learner, Shawn. So it just comes a surprise. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I am excited that you've got yourself polished on that. That's great.
Shawn Hackett, who's Hackett Financial out of Boca Raton, Florida, and he's nice enough to come on a couple times a week to talk about what's going on in the market. So, Shawn, there was a bit of fireworks yesterday in the outside markets. They had the Fed released their minutes talking about, we're going to absolutely raise interest rates, and, the markets went crazy. They were down, I don't know, almost 1,000 points, I think, for a minute, and bounced back up. So that's some volatility for you.
Geopolitical madness.
Yeah.
Is what and so the market always hates uncertainty. It always gets frenetic when it doesn't know what's going to happen. Is Russia going in? They're not going. If they do go in, how long? What are we going to do? How long is it going to be? They're going to restrict wheat and corn exports because wheat and corn, especially wheat, was up strongly yesterday in a sea of red because of worries over supplies not getting out of Ukraine, and so it's just a mess. So until that uncertainty is resolved, we're going to have some markets that are going to be gyrating a lot,
right,
for a while.
So that's my next
question. And then on top of it, the Fed's going to be raising rates, reducing some money supply, trying to pop the bubble in real estate, the bubble in stocks, the bubble in inflation. They're trying to slow this inflation engine down, and so it's just a mess. It's a mess right now.
Yep.
So.
That was the next question I was going to ask. So now you start taking a look at what's going on in, especially the area we're at, Russia, Ukraine, those kind of areas. They produce something like 30% of the world's wheat in that area. You start messing around with some geopolitical stuff, and if Russia does go ahead and say we're going to take everything of east of the Dnieper River, and we're going to do that, and that's going to be plus Russia over there. You would think that you'd start seeing some pretty big run up, and we saw that yesterday. We had closed up like around 20.5 cents or something like that. March wheat was up 24 3/4. I mean, so I finished out the day between 8
And it was up,
$8.
and it was big up on Friday on the same concern.
Right.
So it's had a pretty big 2-day move on, the idea that maybe these wheat exports will be restricted. And so, yeah, wheat's definitely been a big beneficiary for sure.
And the biggest mover in all that is March spring wheat. If you take a look at it, yesterday it closed up almost 950. So I mean, you're looking at some big moves in wheat. If you start looking at wheat like this, how is that going to start playing into this March crop mix report that comes out? I mean, are more guys going to start taking a look at wheat and saying maybe I should plant some wheat with the way the inputs are?
Well, obviously, spring wheat,
Right.
we need to. With the catastrophically low crop we had last year, I mean, we need more acres. We need a better crop because we just had a terrible crop last year. So obviously, the higher spring wheat goes relative to competing markets, the more acres we're going to try to get planted if the weather will cooperate. So yeah, definitely, it pencils out.
Right.
It pencils out. So that's something that could be bearish the market as we approach March, and then of course it's just watch the weather.
Right.
And will the weather allow that crop to get in the ground on time? Is it going to be delayed? And if it does get done on time, do we have late season frost? All the things, flooding. That will be a big determinant as to whether those extra acres will matter or not. But certainly, right now, it looks to me with the Russia uncertainty on top of blisteringly tight, high-quality wheat supplies, the market definitely is trying to err on the side of caution and get a higher price just to make sure they go in the ground.
Yep. So another thing I've been watching and paying attention to, and maybe you can shed some light on this, corn and soybeans have been playing this push and pull game here a little bit. So it seems like when soybeans go down, corn goes up, and when corn goes up, soybeans go down, and we're getting this kind of a push and pull thing. Now, is that why? What do you think that's happening? What are those two dynamics there that's causing that?
Well, remember, the Brazilian drought pattern that we've had has been mostly about soybean production being down in the south of Brazil. The big corn crop is the one they're planting now, so we don't even know what that's going to be like yet. That's what's going to move the corn market in Brazil. So that's disproportionately bullish soybeans. Now in Argentina, Argentina is a much bigger, more prolific producer of soybeans, bean oil, bean meal. They're big on corn, but it's much more of an issue for soybeans. So when we have, when we get the rains that we had in Argentina, it's much more bearish on the soybean market psychology than it is on the corn market psychology. On top of it, Ukraine had a record corn crop apparently. Looking at the estimates, and so they're the third largest exporter of corn in the world. So once again, worrying about, are all those supplies going to get out? Or are they going to be constricted for a while? So because of the weather phenomenon, the yin and yang of weather being more disproportionately impacting soybeans, and given that the Russia-Ukraine situation is more disproportionately impacting wheat and corn, and of course corn and wheat kind of go together, you're getting this yin and yang effect where you get these bifurcations where one goes up, one goes down, one goes down, one goes up, depending upon the mix of weather and geopolitical coming together at the same time.
Gotcha. All right. So lastly, I want to talk about the protein markets here. Then I want to hit on kind of some of this cold weather that we've seen happen over the last 2 weeks. All right, cattle prices. They've been mixed the last couple of weeks, and we're talking some pretty good volatility in those markets. We'll see some pretty decent runs up, and then we'll see some pretty big drop-offs as well. So that volatility in the cattle market is there for sure. So as you take a look at what's going on in the cattle market, what are your thoughts there?
Cattle is extremely sensitive to bearish macro forces, especially the stock market. If you run a correlation chart of cattle on stock market big declines, it just always gets hit because the market's view is that the stock market is a leading indicator of future economic activity. And be given that, beef is a pretty high priced item for households, if those are worried about jobs and the economy, that, what logic would say they're going to pull back on a high cost item like beef.
Right.
So yesterday did not disappoint. On top of it, we had what was perceived to be a bearish cattle on feed report on Friday. They showed cattle on feed and placements a little higher than the estimates were suggested, and so when you put those two things together, it was a perfect day just to hit the market hard. But notice what happened at the end of the day, especially for feeder cattle. We rallied 3 points off the lows in like the last 10 minutes of trade. When you see that, that's a bullish market. That's a market that it was down all day, took all the hits, took all the selling, but then once the stock market started to turn and the selling dried up, it immediately gave half the decline back at the very end of the day. They're saying there's good buying underneath this market, Casey. I really thought that reversal at the end of the day might have suggested that yesterday might have been the low for the cattle trade for a while. So
okay. Let's jump over and look at the hogs real quick. Hogs had a pretty good day yesterday. They were about 37.5 cents, and they've been kind of, again, same kind of concept. They'll get hammered one day and they'll have a great day the next, and it's kind of back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Tons and tons of volatility. Looking at the hog market, what are your thoughts there?
Well, pork is always viewed as I don't want this to be derogatory, but the poor man's meat, right? I mean, it's the meat that more people can afford because it's a lower cost item for the household. So when one's worried about economic concerns, if you're going to reduce your consumption of beef, you might increase your consumption of chicken and pork as a replacement because you're replacing a high cost for lower cost. On top of it, we know the pig numbers are low. We've not been rebuilding the herd, and that's keeping the market nervous. And bidders coming in. So overall, we've been in this, as you said correctly, this back and forth trading pattern. And but hogs have never been as sensitive to stock market gyrations, to economic concerns as the cattle market has tended to be. So yesterday, conversely, it was not as impacted. It was less impacted, and I still believe that the market is it's priced in the lack of Chinese demand. It's priced in the lack of animal feeding units here in the U.S. So what has to happen to tip the scale either up or down is you need to start building the herd, which it doesn't look like we're going to do anytime soon, or we need to get Chinese demand to come back in, which I believe is going to happen starting the second quarter. And I think that's where this market would eventually, break out. If you look at the deferred contracts, Casey, like June or July, we are almost breaking out on the chart, and that's exactly where I would expect Chinese demand to come in. So I almost think that the trading of the hog futures is starting to tell you where the market is sensing when China's going to come back in and buy, because they're really starting to pump up those deferred contracts versus the nearby. So
yep. All right. So now let's jump over and talk about this weather pattern that we're seeing right now, and it's hammering Europe, and I left my door open last night, so the cold weather is just a block away from my house, so it's not too bad. But if you go north of me 4 hours, my air temperature right now is like 20. I know it's not. It's warmer than that. It's like 15, 16 degrees, something like that right now. Maybe 20 degrees, something like that. And but you go 4 hours north and you want to just put a negative number in front of that, negative number sign in front of that, and it gets wicked cold really quick, and you don't have to go very far to get into that really cold Arctic air. Then you go over to Europe and take a look what's going over there, and southern, eastern Europe is just getting hammered by some cold weather. That Arctic cold air that you've been talking about is really starting to make its run south. So I guess talk about that a little bit.
We talked about it before, that we've been dealing with this stretching of the polar vortex. I want to be very clear. This is different than a sudden stratospheric warming event and a polar vortex event like what happened last February. It's very important to understand the distinction. The distinction is if the stratosphere really warms and displaces the cold air and you destabilize the vortex, a piece of the vortex actually breaks away and just lunges into the lower latitudes, and you literally get a polar vortex Arctic air mass on top of where it ought not to be. That's what happened last February.
Right.
That's not what we've seen this so far. What we've seen is that the polar vortex is getting stretched, and then it coils, and it's getting stretched, and it coils, and it's getting stretched. So we're getting a distorted polar vortex, and every time it gets distorted, it's pushing this cold air down, but it's not a polar vortex event. It's a stretching of the polar vortex. And that is a function of the quasi-biennial oscillation being the most negative, second most negative since 1950, which is really high easterly stratospheric winds that blow against the jet stream and consistently stabilize the polar vortex. Now, it doesn't mean, by the way, we're not going to get a sudden stratospheric warming polar vortex event. It just means that we've been dealing with this persistent stretching, and we've had 2 in January, and another one is coming next week. In fact, it looks like it's going to stretch even further than we've seen the last 2. We have frost warnings, serious frost warnings here in Florida this coming weekend in the citrus belt. It looks like it could be below 28 degrees in Central Florida, where the citrus is grown. And so that's the function of this stretching, this extra stretch in the polar vortex this time around that's undulating this air further into the southeast, because you don't get that kind of air in Florida very often. That's a pretty good push. In fact, I think the last time it happened, if I recall, was 2010 that we had something like that come down this far. So that's what's going on, and we don't really see that pattern changing. We think it's going to continue to go back and forth. The only thing is, can we get a southern stratospheric warming event that produces one of these crazy 2 to 3 week periods of? I mean, we had some really cold air and even a lot of places record, but like cycle cold air like last year. I think we will. If I had to guess, just looking at the pattern, probably late February into middle March is probably where I think we could develop one of those, and that would really, set the market off, because that would be a late winter polar vortex and really, produce the kind of heating degree days that you don't normally see in the month of March, which we expect to be very cold. So it's been a different winter, obviously, than last year, and the stretching of the polar vortex is something that that you only will get if you have amplified La Nina, negative QBO, low solar, and we have those 3 conditions that provides this unusual behavior of stretching of the polar vortex. It's an interesting feature, and the reason why Eastern Europe and parts of Russia, because when you elongate it, it's here, and on the opposite side of the northern hemisphere, they're getting the stretch too. So it's those 2 areas that are getting the stretch, just like you mentioned. So it fits why that's happening exactly the way that it is.
Yep.
So.
And it's especially if you look at like the northeast part of the United States, basically from Virginia north, it's been a very cold winter over there, and it kind of goes back to the natural gas thing that we've talked about here before, and heating oils and those kind of things. There's a lot of demand for that right now, and it's just like we see in the marketplace. I mean, it's just driving the prices up.
Well, and right now, I mean, they also had a lot of snow on the eastern seaboard, in the northeast, and that whole eastern quadrant. And it looks like another major snowstorms coming up the northeast, looking at potentially 1 to 3 feet of snow anywhere from New York to Boston up to Maine. Just big time nor'easter snowstorm that's going to dump a tremendous amount of snow on top of what happened to the Carolinas and all the last go around.
Right.
So, but it is a central east-based focus, and you're right on the western edge. I mean, you're just missing the fun of all of that right now. And it doesn't mean you won't get some. It just means right now the pattern is just, as you said, just to the east of you right now.
Well, I'm still holding out for our late March blizzard. You can't live out here and not have one of those. So I'm sure that'll happen.
I actually do think March you'll get that. I think we're going to be moving the air mass a little more central based in March, and you're going to get everything you want to. You can get your skis out and do some cross country skiing. So
well, I'm excited. I can't wait. I mean, I'll tell you what, we need some moisture though. So I guess if we get snowed in for a day or 2, get some moisture out of it, it'll be all right, I guess.
For sure.
All right, Shawn, good stuff as usual. Folks want to reach out to you and get more information about what it is you're doing at Hackett Financial. What's the best way to do that?
The website is Hackett, Hackett, advisors.com. We go over a lot of things about how we do our weather our forecasting to see if we could be of help to your listeners.
Right on. And I'm Casey Seymour with Moving Iron Podcast. Make sure you check me out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. So you find the latest editions of the Moving Iron Podcast. Also go to Moving Iron LLC for everything Moving Iron related. Also check out the information there about the Moving Iron Summit coming up in Nashville, Tennessee. If you're looking for more information about that, send me an email at MovingIronPodcast at MovingIronPodcast.com. And I'll be happy to answer any questions you have. That'll be September 6th, 7th, and 8th at the Hilton downtown there in Nashville. So looking forward to that. Sean's going to be there, and he's going to be talking about what's going on in the weather as we take a look at there and how that's going to affect the markets coming up. So, Sean, looking forward to that.
El Nino, El Nino, El Nino, and El Nino. That's what we're going to be talking about.
Outstanding. Can't wait.
It will be a completely different presentation with different weather variables and different impacts. It'll be nothing like the ones we've been doing for the last few years, which have been more La Nina centric. Mm-hmm. So it'll be good. It'll be important, and it'll really be give a different look on what crops and what production areas and what places in the world are going to be more impacted than not. Right on.
Well, Sean, appreciate you being on the podcast, man.
Thanks, Casey. Really look forward to Thursday with once again a polished intro.
That's right. We are going to polish that sucker up. Next time I'll probably blow your mind. So I hope you're ready for that.
I'm ready.
All right, man. All right. Well, with that, I'm Casey Seymour, Shawn Hackett. Let's go smart, folks. Out. You want to have a meaningful competitive advantage to help sell more equipment. Whether you represent the sales, parts, or management department of an implement dealership, there's a surprising amount of complexity when it comes to tire, wheel, and track technology. Let Axon worry about that so you can get back to supporting your customers. Axon has leveraged years of experience to create a streamlined process that gives you a proven path to help today's grower and sell more equipment. The roots of their organization go back almost 100 years to the invention of the rubber tractor tire. Supporting agriculture is the number one driver of Axon from product development through sales and service. To find more or become an Axon dealer, head over to axontire.com. This podcast is also brought to you by Valley Transportation. Valley has over 33 years in the trucking business, moving ag and construction equipment across the country. At Valley Transportation, our goal is to help you reach yours. For more information, go to valleytransinc.com or give Parker a call at 800-657-4910. This podcast is also brought to you by AgDirect. No matter how you buy your ag equipment, from a dealer, auction, or a private party, AgDirect can help you finance it. You can even apply online at agdirect.com. Learn more about your financing options at agdirect.com.
Moving iron in the 21st century. Hard-working people working hard for you and me. Moving iron time and time again. Through the years you'll find us here.